Furthermore, it goes without saying that all of the people, living, dead, and otherwise in this story are fictional or used in a fictional context. Only the gods are real. This is a baller opening line to American Gods. Neil Gaiman may very well be my favorite author of all time.
I'm Neil Gaiman, and I'm at beautiful Lake Kleipava near Reykjavik in Iceland because 20 years ago I had an idea for a book called American Gods, and it all started here.
He inspires me like no other. He's authored a metric shitload of books, but there are two I want to focus on in particular. The aforementioned American Gods and the Nancy Boys. We'll get into a Nancy Boys. Trust me, we'll get into a Nancy Boys. But for this video first, I'll be mainly talking about American Gods. I'll let the writing speak for itself.
Most of this battle will be fought in a place you cannot go and you cannot touch, in the hearts and in the minds of the people, said Chernobog.
The novel is a story about a war between the old gods and the new. But really, it's a 500-page story about a road trip. Seriously, there's just so much driving in this novel, it's insane. The novel also goes off in massive tangents. There's a 16-page chapter where a woman gets sentenced to an archaic form of punishment called transportation, and it has no impact to the main plot whatsoever. I think it only served to enrich the world of the book, which is fine. I'll show you the real meat of the story. I'll share the parts that I thought were most interesting while avoiding as many spoilers to the plot as possible. You see, the novel paints a picture of America being a grand central station.
In my last song, I toured the United States. Now I'm all over the world and it feels great.
What does it mean by that? Well, the country of course has a rich history of immigrants making it their home. Whatever beliefs the immigrants had, they took with them into the new country. These beliefs, composing of gods and other supernatural beings, manifested and are real. They roam the outskirts of small-town America.
When the people came to America, they brought us with them. They brought me, and Loki and Thor, Anansi and the Lion God, leprechauns and clericans and banshees, Kubera and Frahol and Ashtaroth, and they brought you. We rode here in their minds and we took root. We traveled with the settlers to the new lands across the ocean.
The land is vast. Soon enough our people abandoned us, remembered us only as creatures of the old land, as things that had not come with them to the new. Our true believers passed on, or stopped believing, and we were left, lost and scared and dispossessed, to get by on what little smidgens of worship or belief we could find, and to get by as best we could.
If these are the so-called old gods, who are the new gods they're warring with? First is the technical boy, the god of technology, who appears to us in the novel as a potty-mouthed fat kid in a limo.
You tell Wednesday this, man. You tell him he's history. He's forgotten. He's old. And he better accept it. Tell him that we are the future. And we don't give a fuck about him or anyone like him. His time is over. Yes? You fucking tell him that, man. He's been consigned to the dumpster of history, while people like me ride our limos down the superhighway of tomorrow. Tell him that we have fucking reprogrammed reality. Tell him that language is a virus, and that religion is an operating system, and that prayers are just so much fucking spam. Tell him that, or I'll fucking kill you, said the young man, mildly from the smoke.
There's something I want to point out about Technical Boy. You may have noticed I've been using footage from the TV adaptation of the novel, which expands on the backstory of many of the characters, including Technical Boy. Technology is a broad term for whoever the god of it is. It's not only excluded to the neon gadgets of today, but to the tools we've invented throughout human history. In the show, we see a version of him in the past as Telephone Boy. Neil Gaiman himself mentions in an interview the existence of a telegraph boy, telephone boy, and television boy. That's a lot of boys. Being the god of technology, he likely existed the very moment a caveman smashed two stones together. That, ironically, makes him older than any old god in the book and show. There's a point in this novel where it mentions the irrelevance of categorizing things as old or new, that patterns matter more. The next quote-unquote new god in our list is Medea. There's a funny moment between our old gods when talking about her, mistaking her for the Greek god Medea.
Medea? I think I have heard of her. Isn't she the one who killed her children? Different woman, said Mr. Nancy. Same deal.
Medea's entrance in the novel really shocks you. The main character is holding up in a hotel, watching an episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show before it inexplicably turns into a scene of domestic abuse. Medea then hijacks the TV, talking in the form of Lucy Ricardo from I Love Lucy. She describes herself as this.
I'm the idiot box. I'm the TV. I'm the all-seeing eye in the world of the cathode ray. I'm the boob tube. I'm the little shrine the family gathers to adore.
You're the television, or someone in the television?
The TV's the altar. I'm what people are sacrificing to.
What do they sacrifice?
Their time, mostly, said Lucy. Sometimes, each other.
She raised two fingers, blew imaginary gun smoke from the tips, then she winked a big old I Love Lucy wink. You're a god, said Shadow. Lucy smirked and took a ladylike puff of her cigarette.
You could say that, she said. We are the coming thing. We're shopping malls. Your friends are crappy roadside attractions. Hell, we're online malls, while your friends are sitting by the side of the highway selling homegrown produce from a garden cart. No, there aren't even fruit sellers, buggy whip vendors, whalebone corset repairers. We are now and tomorrow. Your friends aren't even yesterday anymore.
Our marshmallow peep show. Candy cream eggs, cellophane grass, bunnies and duckies. We popularized the pagan. We practically invented brunch. We built this holiday. You and me.
The way I see it, Medea is the god in charge of entertainment, celebrity culture, and holidays.
You're an old god new again. That's what we offer. That's what we represent.
I feel misrepresented in the media.
Saint Nick took the same deal you did. The only reason why you're relevant today is because Easter is a Christian holiday. It's religious Darwinism. Adapt and survive. What we have achieved together, you and I, is no small feat. Now that we're living in an atheist world, you should be thrilled, overjoyed that anyone believes in anything that doesn't have a screen anymore. What happens if they all decide that God doesn't exist?
The final new god is the head honcho of the whole group, Mr. World.
There is a terror in knowing what Mr. World is about.
Mr. World is often noted as the god of globalization, but that doesn't explain enough of his character. He can be interpreted as many things. The god of conspiracy theories and the top 1% of the top 1%.
A conspiracy bigger than all of us. There's a powerful group of people out there that are secretly running the world. I'm talking about the guys no one knows about, the guys that are invisible. The top 1% of the top 1%, the guys that play God without permission.
The god of capitalism, knowing what people want and tricking them into buying into it. The god of buy-ins and sellouts. Most prominently, he can be viewed as the god of government. The unseen forces that control our lives. Talking about him too much is gonna be too deep into spoiler territory, so I'ma just avoid that. So, to what this video was leading up to. There is a part in the story that just really blew my mind. The main character meets up with a couple of Egyptian gods, Mr. Ibis and Mr. Jackal, in a town fittingly named Cairo. Before we go on, bear in mind that although none of this is actually truly factual, it still is damn interesting. So, asked Shadow, what are you people doing here in Cairo? Was it just a name or something? No, not at all. Actually, this region takes its name from us, although people barely know it. It was a trading post back in the old days. Frontier times? You might call it that, said Mr. Ibis. The folk who brought me here came up the Mississippi a long time back. Shadow stopped in the street and stared. Are you trying to tell me that ancient Egyptians came here to trade 5,000 years ago? Mr. Ibis said nothing, but he smirked loudly. Then he said, 3,530 years ago, give or take. Okay, said Shadow, I'll buy it, I guess. What were they trading? Not much, said Mr. Ibis. Animal skins, some food, copper from the mines in the Upper Peninsula. The whole thing was rather a disappointment, not worth the effort. They stayed here long enough to believe in us, to sacrifice to us, and for a handful of the traders to die of fever and be buried here, leaving us behind them. He stopped dead in the middle of the sidewalk, turned around slowly, arms extended. This country has been Grand Central Station for 10,000 years or more. You say to me, what about Columbus? Sure, what about him? Columbus did what people had been doing for thousands of years. There's nothing special about coming to America. I've been writing stories about it from time to time. Personally, and this is speaking as a subscriber to Scientific American here, I feel very sorry for the professionals whenever they find another confusing skull, something that belonged to the wrong sort of people, or whenever they find statues or artifacts that confuse them. For they'll talk about the odd, but they won't talk about the impossible, which is where I feel sorry for them. For as soon as something becomes impossible, it slides out of belief entirely, whether it's true or not. I mean, here's a skull that shows the Ainu, the Japanese Aboriginal race, were in America 9,000 years ago. Here's another that shows there were Polynesians in California nearly 2,000 years later. And all the scientists mutter and puzzle over who's descended from who, missing the point entirely. Heaven knows what'll happen if they ever actually find the Hopi emergence tunnels. That'll shake a few things up. You just wait. Did the Irish come to America in the Dark Ages, you ask me? Of course they did. And the Welsh, and the Vikings, while the Africans from the West Coast, what in later days they called the Slave Coast or the Ivory Coast, they were trading with South America, and the Chinese visited Oregon a couple of times. They called it Fusang. The Basque established their secret sacred fishing grounds off the coast of Newfoundland 1,200 years back. Now I suppose you're going to say, but Mr. Ibis, these people were primitives. They didn't have radio controls and vitamin pills and jet airplanes. The misconception is that men didn't travel long distances in boats before the days of Columbus, yet New Zealand and Tahiti and countless Pacific islands were settled by people in boats whose navigation skills would have put Columbus to shame. And the wealth of Africa was from trading, although that was mostly to the east, to India and China. My people, the Nile folk, we discovered early on that a reed boat will take you around the world if you have the patience and enough jars of sweet water. You see, the biggest problem with coming to America in the old days was that there wasn't a lot here that anyone wanted to trade, and that it was much too far away. This novel offers a lot, but honestly, the one final thing that really resonated with me was how, in the end, we realize that these old gods and new gods are more similar than one would think. They were too big. Everything was too big in that place. There were old gods in that place, gods with skins the brown of old mushrooms, the pink of chicken flesh, the yellow of autumn leaves. Some were crazy and some were sane. Shadow recognized the old gods. He'd met them already, or he'd met others like them. There were Ifrits and Piskies, giants and dwarves. He saw the woman he had met in the darkened bedroom in Rhode Island, saw the writhing green snake coils of her hair. He saw Mama G from the carousel, and there was blood on her hands and a smile on her face. He knew them all. He recognized the new ones too. There was somebody who had to be a railroad baron in an antique suit, his watch chain stretched across his vest. He had the air of one who had seen better days. His forehead twitched. There were the great gray gods of the airplanes, heirs to all the dreams of heavier-than-air travel. There were car gods there, a powerful, serious-faced contingent with blood on their black gloves and on their chrome teeth, recipients of human sacrifice on a scale undreamed of since the Aztecs. Even they looked uncomfortable. Worlds change. Others had faces of smudged phosphors. They glowed gently as if they existed in their own light. Shadow felt sorry for them all. There was an arrogance to the new ones. Shadow could see that. But there was also a fear. They were afraid that unless they kept pace with a changing world, unless they remade and redrew and rebuilt the world in their image, their time would already be over. All these gods here were afraid of being replaced, of being displaced, their existence dependent and heavily affected by the whims of the world. You don't need to be a god to know what that's like. Reading all this gets you the sense there's an impermanence to everything. Have a look at these gods. Have a look at their immortal lives suddenly feeling so mortal. This scene retrieves a truly melancholic outlook at the world from the eyes of gods. It makes you think how nothing matters. If the world shifts one way and you go another, you're done for. It makes you think on the future and how this ever-changing world no longer feels at home, if it has ever. Sometimes it feels like the world is always against us. But then again, since when have the odds ever been on our side? This novel has taught me that. This is why American Gods is such a god tier book.
Only in my darkest moments can I see the light. I think I'm prone to getting blinded when it's bright. Well, this December I'll remember. Want you to see it when I do. Ooh, God knows I do. Only in my darkest moments can I see the light. I think I'm prone to getting blinded when it's bright. Well, this December I'll remember. Want you to see it when I do. Ooh, God knows I